This is coffee. I'm not kidding. This is crystal clear coffee, and it was not exactly easy for me to make. And in a few minutes, I'm going to find out if it was even worth all of the effort when I try to make a crystal clear espresso martini with it. But why did I make this? Who would want this? Am I insane? Don't answer that last one. This whole thing started when Meredith, co-produces the show with me in case you're new here, sent me this picture and told me I absolutely had to make this for the show. And I won't lie, I was baffled because that espresso martini is frankly glass clear and colorless, and I'd never even considered such a thing before. So I did what any of us would do. I started Googling. But first, what even is an espresso martini? Because if we're gonna make a crystal clear one, I think we need to have a basic one to judge it by, right? Well, it's an extremely well-known cocktail that was invented by Dick Bradsell in 1984, supposedly when a model walked in where he was tending bar, and said model asked him to make her a drink that would wake her up and fuck her up. I don't know if that bit about the model is true, but it's fun, so I like to go with it. Originally, it was in fact made with hot, fresh espresso, and I don't know about you, but that's not very convenient, and I don't have an espresso machine in here. But thankfully, these days, the go-to technique seems to be to use some variety of a very strong cold brew coffee. Since I'm not very interested in being puritanical about our baseline cocktail here today, that's good enough for me. And I built this espresso martini using Jeff Morgenthaler's recipe. His is actually my personal favorite for the espresso martini. It's the one I usually make when I'm making an espresso martini. Thank you, Jeff Morgenthaler. And it's made with 1 ounce of a very strong cold brew, 3/4 of an ounce of vodka, and 3/4 of an ounce of Kahlua, with a twist of lemon peel that goes into the shaker. The twist of oil goes into the shaker. We do that into the shaker because if you save that to the end and twisted it over the top the way you normally do with a cocktail, it would destroy this beautiful coffee foam that the drink should have that will hold up 3 coffee beans. And it tastes positively divine. Kahlua has a lot of chocolate notes in it. I think chocolate might even be a major ingredient in Kahlua. Either that or when you sweeten up coffee sufficiently, it ends up tasting a little bit chocolatey. This drink is divinely delicious. It manages to be very approachable, very coffee forward. I mean, it tastes like coffee. Chocolatey, but extremely approachable, right? This is not a bitter drink. This is not a challenging drink. It is also, and I feel like this needs to be said, it is not a heavy drink. It is not a very, very cloyingly sweet drink. It is very well balanced, and it would be dangerously easy to put away a few of these. Somehow, despite the use of a pretty heavy liqueur like Kahlua, it still feels light, delicious, fantastic drink. Fantastic drink, but as you can see, decidedly not colorless. In fact, damn near black. And an espresso martini, even if it doesn't involve fresh espresso, is going to involve some kind of coffee, and coffee is not colorless. And since we gotta have coffee in it, I immediately started working on how to make crystal clear, colorless coffee, of all things. So I did a bit of Googling, and I saw that people had been playing around with this idea online, but I wasn't exactly thrilled with their results that they were finding. The closest I saw anybody get to what we wanted visually was using a Brita filter, which is a carbon filter. So I tried activated charcoal and filtering it out, and I did not get the same results at all. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm not gonna cast aspersions. I am not 100% convinced that if you pour coffee through a Brita filter, it comes out clear. But I would also say that if it did, it would only be able to do so by stripping out so many flavors that it would be very weak or barely recognizable as coffee. So I found nothing useful going the filtration, decoloring route. So the Brita filter was not going to solve this problem. We were going to need the power of science!
By the way, why are we wearing bras on our heads?
Ceremonial.
So I brewed up a pot of coffee and vacuum distilled it. So if you're not up on what vacuum distillation is, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at atmospheric pressure, right? But under a vacuum, it can boil much, much lower. And that's true for all liquids, as far as I know. So if we can lower the boil point, we can distill the coffee, separate the flavors from the coffee, and recollect them over there without actually heating it up to the point where some of the delicate organic compounds that make coffee taste like coffee get destroyed, right? Because they're heat sensitive, or at least that's the idea. I honestly don't really know enough about the organic chemistry of coffee to know how heat sensitive the organic compounds that make it taste like coffee are. I didn't really care. I just figured it was better safe than sorry, so I ran it as cold as I could possibly manage. I don't have a fancy rotovap. Those are pretty expensive. Instead, what I've got is the very finest vacuum distillation apparatus you could cobble together with a couple $100 on Amazon. Assuming, of course, you've already got a pretty decent vacuum pump. I didn't bother getting a proper heating mantle because I already had this sous vide circulator and I could make that do the trick. Honestly, it might even be better than that because it has really precise temperature temperature control. I think you have to get pretty pricey on the mantles to get precise temperature control as opposed to just like wattage or something like that. Basic process goes like this. Coffee goes into the round bottom boil flask. I tossed in a few extra beans to act as bump chips. Again, because of budget, bump chips are usually ceramic things that go in there to provide extra nucleation points that prevent it from surging if it overboils up into the condenser and ruining the distillate. Actually, in this case, coffee beans are fine. They're a fine way to go. And I put that whole round bottom flask into the water bath. Then I pumped a mix of propylene glycol and water, otherwise known as RV antifreeze, through my condenser. And I know this is gonna sound like I'm making this up, but I swear to you, I am not. I had a couple feet of copper tubing left over from when I had the mini split installed in the HTD studio here. And it was just sitting in a pile outside waiting for the next bulk garbage pickup day. So I ran outside and I grabbed that and I bent it into a very ugly coil. I got a cheap fish tank pump, pushed coolant out of a Cambro up into the condenser and then out through the copper, which I sank into another Cambro that I packed with ice, salt, and also dry ice. And yes, I did briefly manage to freeze the antifreeze. It gets cold when you put those things together. When I put the whole thing under vacuum, I got a steady boil at 70 degrees Celsius, which is not ice cold, but not bad actually. You might be asking why antifreeze. Well, the reason I needed the condenser so cold that I was using antifreeze instead of water is because the temperature difference between the vapor that is going into the condenser and the water jacket or the coolant jacket around the condenser has to be pretty wide in order to efficiently turn that vapor back into liquid. This was probably overkill, but I had zero desire to do this twice. And voila, clear coffee. Technically a clear coffee hydrosol. I did a whole episode about how to make great big blocks of clear ice for your home. And it's not a very simple process. It's pretty involved. Takes up a lot of freezer space. It does work, but it's certainly not convenient. If you want to make clear ice at home and take up no room in your freezer, honestly, the only game in town is Claris. And I was a little bit skeptical about these machines, but I have actually fallen in love with them. This is the original Claris. It's a bit of an enthusiast's device, but it does do an outstanding job of making 4 big 2-inch crystal clear ice cubes every 12 hours. If you keep at it, you can do 8 and 24. Sits right on the counter, doesn't take up any space in your freezer, and does exactly what it says it's supposed to do, and does it very, very well. They do now have the more accessible Claris Mini, which basically the exact same idea here, except it does 2 ice cubes instead of 4. Takes up a little bit less space on the counter, hits the bank account just a little bit less hard, but both of which are, honestly, I think, really quality devices. If this is something that you're really into, if clear ice is important to you, if you are trying to elevate your cocktail game and just make the best drinks you can possibly make at home, and this is your hobby, I don't know. I don't see how you could go wrong with these. You're gonna love them. They look great on a counter. They're built really well. They do what they say. They're extremely simple to operate. And if you go to craftclaris.com right now, use code HTD10, you're gonna get 10% off. I feel like it's the holidays. Maybe you should treat yourself or somebody else, but that's up to you. Thank you, Claris, for sponsoring this episode, and now, back to the show. Without question, we're leaving some flavors behind in the boil flask, maybe even a lot of flavors, but I also feel pretty damn good about calling this clear coffee. And how did it come out? Well, let's find out. I don't think I've actually tasted this yet. That is clear. Is that not clear? That is clear. If you were grading diamonds, that would be colorless. So here it is, my clear coffee distillate. It definitely tastes like coffee. It's weak. It's not the strongest coffee, but it tastes like coffee. The real question is gonna be, what will it taste like when we combine it with the other parts of an espresso martini? Overall, I'm pretty happy with the result, and clear. By the way, you would have had a front row seat to all of my late night distillation efforts if you were in my patrons Discord server the night that I did all of this, which was fun, I think, for everybody who was hanging out with me, but it was also really great for me because I was getting feedback and assistance on my rig, which is all pretty new to me. You know, there's some very skilled people, it turns out, hanging out in that Discord. Unfortunately, the situation on YouTube compels me to point out that this show is several full-time jobs, and without the support of my patrons, it simply can't exist. If you love the show and you want to see it continue and you're interested in little looks behind the scenes, knowing how the sausage gets made, maybe having a hand in the sausage, getting the pins that we make for the show, access to our private Discord server, or the HTD app that I made that makes the show so much more easy to use as your personal cocktail guide, I'm just asking you to please take a look at what's over on the Patreon and think about it. And if you're into it, I will see you in the Discord. And to those of you who make this show possible, thank you. And now that we have this distilled, clear coffee, let's make an espresso martini with it. But I can't use Kahlua or any other coffee liqueur that I'm aware of. I don't think that there's a colorless coffee liqueur on the market. As I said, Kahlua and chocolate share a lot of flavor notes as it is, and so do coffee and chocolate. So instead of using something like Kahlua, we're gonna pair this up with a white creme de cacao. And since we're going to all the trouble of making this crystal glass clear, we're not gonna shake it either, like you would a normal espresso martini, because that would defeat the whole purpose of this, in my opinion. So I wanna stir it. Now, I have not made this drink before. I haven't workshopped it. I've thought a little bit about it, but I wanted my first tasting of this drink to be right here on the show to see if distilling coffee was gonna be worth the enormous effort that this took me to do. So here we go. So you get yourself your mixing glass and we're gonna put some ice in there. I'm gonna put in half an ounce of creme de cacao, and I'm 90% sure that that will leave this thing undersweet. But I wanna decide if it needs more sweetness with more cacao from here or just more sweetness. So for now, I'm just doing a half an ounce. And if a half an ounce turns out to be the right answer, great. But I'm leaving myself some room to play with this when it's done. 1.5 ounces of vodka and 1.5 ounces of my clear distilled coffee. Really kind of the idea here is to let the creme de cacao kind of be a background flavor note and kind of try and let the distillate do its job as much as possible. I don't know about this. I don't know if this is gonna be any good. I hope I am surprised. I honestly, guys, I suspect that I waste a lot of time, effort, and money. I mean, not that much money. Like I said, it was a pretty rinky-dink distillation apparatus, but I have a funny feeling I wasted a lot of effort doing this to make a drink that won't be that good. And we'll strain that right in there. And you can say that though, it is absolutely colorless. That is clear. Looks like water. Very pleased with the way that came out. Let's see how it tastes. Hey, that's not bad. That is not bad at all. That definitely registers as a coffee cocktail. Wow. It's not as punchy as the dark one at all, but man, I'm pretty pleased with that. That's good. Thought I was gonna have to workshop it, but a half an ounce was just right. The creme de cacao is bringing back the parts that I think we lost when we left the brown part of the distillate behind. When you pair that with the distilled coffee, it brings it right back to coffee. That is awesome. Shit. It's nice to have some stuff pay off once in a while. If you've been watching the show, you know a lot of my efforts are not going rewarded. The views, hot dog, I like that. I have to keep that in the fridge now. I really thought I was gonna pour that out because it was gonna be useless, but nope, that's going right back in the fridge next time I feel like showing off to somebody who comes over. Cool. Okay, so that came out a lot better than I was prepared for it to come out, and it is diamond colorless. Colorless, clear, looks like water. Looks like a vodka martini that was stirred. Couldn't be happier than that. Oh my God, it's so good. It really, wow, damn, dude. Oh man, it's nice to have it work out. But the thing of that is, when Meredith sent me that picture, I looked at that clear espresso martini and said, well, we're gonna need clear coffee. That was my first thought. I said, that's gonna be the hard thing to do. We gotta figure out a clear, colorless coffee, and then from there I can make the drink. And because I did my research and the process entirely based on the idea of needing this to be made from clear coffee, I completely missed this video from Kevin Koss where he used Rich Wood's amazing fat washing technique to make a clear coffee vodka.
Because I wanted to see if I could impart flavor into a spirit without additional color, by using everyday household equipment and by not distilling.
So when I saw this technique, my mind went straight to a clear, but still creamy version of the espresso martini. Here are the ingredients we'll use.
If only I'd searched clear espresso martini instead of clear coffee, I would have been armed with different information. So obviously I need to try that. I used canola oil as my carrier, infused coffee into that, aggressively stirred it with vodka on a stir plate for a couple of hours, and then put all of that into a separatory funnel and left it in the fridge overnight. I know freezing a fat wash is sort of the way everybody wants to do it. That is great if you have like a Cambro or a jar or something that you're gonna work with, but honestly, a separatory funnel doesn't cost all that much money, and I find them enormously useful. However, you're gonna think I'm an idiot because I had a nice separation here, and when I parted that off, the vodka was still kind of cloudy. I looked into it to figure out why is my vodka still cloudy when my oil is there and my vodka is here. It turns out that what I probably did was accidentally emulsify a small portion of the oil into the vodka, either because I hadn't perfectly rinsed every drop of soap residue off of some piece of glassware somewhere along the way, because soap is a emulsifier, or I just somehow lucked out and I stirred it in there through brute force. Who knows? That would have happened had I just froze the thing anyway. It's exactly the same. Freezing or chilling in a separatory funnel produces the same result. And if you look, you'll find plenty of people online who have the same problem. When they do the freeze technique, don't blame that. I might have been able to like cold crash it out with a day or two in my very cold freezer, but I'm very impatient and I happen to have the tools on hand to not need to wait. This is a Spinzall. It is a bartender centrifuge created by Dave Arnold, and you can do some very cool things with it that are extremely difficult, if not impossible to achieve without it. I'm not gonna lie, it is a pricey piece of either professional or enthusiast gear, still a lot cheaper than a chemist centrifuge, but I will put some links around so that you can pick one up. It's very nice of Modernist Pentry to lend me one and check them out and pick up something because I use stuff from them all the time. They're great. Not a sponsor of this episode, by the way, just a friend of the show. Thank you guys for the Spinzall. I love it. I use it as often as I can. In this case, to strip out the last bit of emulsified oil from the vodka, all I needed to do was pack the Spinzall in ice, run it up to speed, add the vodka, and wait like 30 minutes. Ta-da! It shortened what would have probably taken me 24 or 48 hours into 20 minutes. Fantastic. And ta-da! There it is. Our clear and very nearly colorless coffee vodka. It is not quite as colorless as the distilled hydrosol, but I would take it. I think it's fine. Just to have a quick sample here because I wasn't really able to produce a ton of this. Like anything, I want it chilled and slightly diluted from where it starts, right? My personal preference. If I want to taste it, how I would use it in a cocktail or something like that. And frankly, I would even put a bar spoon of simple in here, and maybe I will. Tastes very strongly of coffee, but without some other stuff in there, just kind of neat and on ice. Honestly, I am getting a lot of vodka. Not that vodka has a flavor, but it is competing with the ethanol for presence in my palate. However, I tasted this before. It is fantastic. Right now, it's just kind of not playing, right? If I add a little simple to this, and think about it, right? This is bone dry. There's no sugar at all in this coffee vodka. If we add a little simple to it, we turn it into something like closer to a coffee liqueur. It's just a bar spoon. And now it is absolutely erupting with coffee flavor. It is so packed with the full spectrum of coffee flavor. It's really hard to endorse my distillation technique, especially given how much easier this is. This is fucking great. I guess the argument in favor of distillation is that it is maybe a bit more colorless. And I guess if you're like a purist and you need your espresso martini to have coffee in it, and distilled coffee registers more as actual coffee to you than coffee-infused vodka, which is what this is, then I guess you're gonna have to distill. Otherwise, I gotta say, go with the fat-washed coffee vodka. It's very good. It's very, very good. It's excellent. Now that I've got Rich Woods' coffee vodka, I want to reproduce his espresso martini as close as I possibly can with what I've got on hand and my feeble hands, my fool's techniques, my amateurism.
You see what I have to work with here.
It's true, though. I do. I mean, like, there are people out there who are masters and wizards, and honestly, I'm not one of them. But yeah, I want to try and make his as closely as I possibly can. We're going to start with 1.5 ounces of coffee vodka. And yep, for some reason this time I'm putting the ice in second. I don't know. Really doesn't matter. I want 1/2 ounce of Dolin Blanc vermouth. That shocks me because what Rich is doing here is taking the espresso martini and turning it back into a martini, which is pretty cool. I don't know really what to expect here. So 1/2 ounce of Dolin Blanc. Blanc is not the same as dry. In fact, it's not dry. This is a sweet vermouth that is colorless. It is another vermouth tradition. There are a number of drinks, namely I think the El Presidente, that people make with dry vermouth that should be made with a Blanc vermouth. Now he wants 1/2 ounce of white creme de cacao. We'll use the same one that we used before. Going off of what was in his short, I think that was about 1/4 ounce, a very scant pour of a dry Fino sherry, which is not very colored. It has a little bit of color in it, but not much. It all remains pretty colorless. Let's crack some ice into that. Also, I want to point out too, this looks a little bit green in the glass, and I don't think it's a light effect. I don't think it's the color of the lid and the bottom imbuing that, but as you can see, we lose most of it as soon as we dilute it. Crack some ice in here, and again, I am a huge fan of the idea that if you're gonna go to the trouble of clarifying, of decoloring something, please don't shake it. Make it a stir drink. There's one other little trick in this whole thing that Rich does, where he paints the side of the glass with Kahlua. Now, I am not in the habit of painting my drinks, therefore I don't have a bartender's paintbrush handy, so I'm just gonna do the best I can. And I think the main trick here is that the glass has to be utterly frozen. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna see if this works. I really hope it does. I'm just gonna put a drop in there. Run it down, run it back out. Yeah, it's not bad, actually. He might be using some kind of like frozen or thickened Kahlua. I'm not really sure, but I'll take that. That's not bad. Strain that in. And there you have what I hope is pretty close to Rich Woods' espresso martini. Thank you, Mr. Woods. Thank you. Also, give Rich a follow on Instagram and TikTok and wherever else you can find him. Wow, that is way different than mine. Whoa. Oh, it's so much brighter. So I think it might come as no surprise that this is a bit of a broader departure from what you would expect an espresso martini to taste like. In fairness, the version I made with the distillate, and this is just down to the recipe that I used. If you used his in the same kind of a recipe with just creme de cacao and vodka, I think you would have something much more similar to a traditional espresso martini in flavor. He chose to take this colorless coffee vodka and push it in a direction that you couldn't otherwise, which I think is so cool. He is bending this towards a traditional martini, and it's a very surprising flavor because it is distinctly coffee, but very dry. And it has these complicated, subtle, nutty wine notes, maybe some very faint herbal notes coming from that Dolan Blanc vermouth, you know, because maybe there's some bitterness in there. Honestly, I think that my Kahlua paint did a poor job. He says that it should slowly melt into the drink and change it over time. I got a feeling he's thickening that Kahlua or something somehow. I just have that feeling, because when he painted it on, it looked thick. So I might be missing that. Even still, if that's a change over time, I would say that I'm experiencing this drink as you would when it was served. I love it. It's super cool. It's very, very neat. It's a spirit-forward drink, actually. That's what I have to say about this. That is what is maybe the unique thing about this. This is a spirit-forward, stirred, sophisticated, New York style, Algonquin round table cocktail, because the spirit is coffee vodka. That is the dominant flavor in a very dry way, balanced with vermouth, balanced with sherry, lightly sweetened with creme de cacao. And that's cool. It's like, what if coffee was a martini? Wow. Don't put olives in this. Very cool drink. I'm in love with it. I am in love with it. We're now at the end of the plans I had for this episode. I have a note up here that says, see what else you can do with it. So let's see what else I can do with it. I've made 3 espresso martinis. When I started this, I started looking at all of these clear, colorless coffee products we have between the hydrosol and the vodka. And I started thinking, what would an espresso Sazerac be? That sounds really good to me. I want to try that. I have precious little ingredients here to use. We're not going to use my hydrosol because that is 0 proof. That is not something that can be the base of a cocktail. I'm going to build this at 1.5 ounces to preserve however much of this delicious coffee vodka I have, because maybe we'll get one more drink in. 1.5 ounces. Fuck it. We'll do the other half an ounce. One more drink is really all I need. 2 ounces of coffee vodka. We want to stick with this coffee cacao thing because that's really kind of what makes it work, but I don't want to stop there. So we're going to do a little bar spoon of cacao. We're going to do 3 dashes of Peychaud's bitters. Make it 4. I got this vibe that I want to do some chartreuse in there to differentiate it maybe, but we're going to do the absinthe rinse. Maybe we do a chartreuse rinse. I think that we can also think of this, a Sazerac and an improved whiskey cocktail are really kind of the same thing. So why don't we do a bar spoon of maraschino? Now that I'm thinking about it, I want to make sure this isn't just another espresso martini. Maybe we should have split base it with rye. No, I don't think so, because I do think that the rye would overpower it. I don't really want to do that. I think that what we've got there is pretty cool, and I kind of love the color of it because you don't have the color of the rye. The pink of the Peychaud's actually takes over. That's pretty fun. You think here for a second? Do we do? Yeah, let's stick with the absinthe. Let's just do that. Stir this with ice. I love what having this be totally colorless lets you do, because now you can make it any color you want, which is really fun. Take this frozen glass. I will pour a splash of absinthe in there. My spritzer is in the other room, but that's okay. Roll that around. Pour out the remainder. Strain our drink in. Looks so cool. That is a thing with Sazeracs. They go in a double rocks glass with a lot of freeboard, to borrow a nautical term. It's just the way they're served. Pull a twist of lemon. Good pairing with our coffee. Give that a twist. Don't put it in, although some people do. And Sazzapresso? Sazzapresso, we'll call it that. Oh, I don't really love that. It's weird. Okay, wow. This goes through a parade of flavors. Interesting. So it's complicated, right? Because we're getting all of these coffee notes, but without sweetening them sufficiently. It's not really sweet enough to strongly register as a coffee drink, although it clearly is a coffee drink, but it's coffee tasting askance. And coffee dried out might not be as interesting a flavor as rye. You know, it's not maybe. So I kind of feel like this wants to be a touch sweeter, maybe a second bar spoon of something, or yeah, maybe another bar spoon of the creme de cacao. Otherwise, the bitterness is pretty present, the lemon is pretty present. It's just kind of macing those base notes. It's got plenty of anise coming from both the absinthe rinse and our Peychaud's bitters. They're pretty anise forward. Let me hit this with another bar spoon of creme de cacao and see where we get here now. Sazzapresso, part 2. Okay, so that's way better. Now we're getting much stronger coffee notes, but really neatly in tension with the anise of the absinthe. And it might surprise you, but those flavors go together really, really well. In fact, there's this whole concept called pousse café that I did an episode on, where as an after dinner thing, they would serve coffee with like a layered drink of different herbal liqueurs that as you sip through it, you would get different liqueurs to pair with your coffee. It's awesome. They're really good, particularly when you get to the chartreuse layer, the absinthe layer. I love what those flavors do together. The only other thing that might be really good in a drink like this, curacao, orange goes really well with coffee. I'm not gonna go there right now. It's just a thought that something like a spirit-forward, old-fashioned kind of format drink might have curacao in it if it was a really improved kind of drink. I think if we split base this, would the coffee come through? It really depends on what you split base it with. I don't think it's gonna win in a fight with like rye or bourbon, for example, unless you did like a very short pour. But it's cool, it's an interesting drink. I still think that the better use for this is making an excellent espresso martini. Fun times. Guys, that is the show. I will see you very soon on another episode of HTD. In the meantime, please like and subscribe and do check out my Patreon. I will see you in the Discord. Good night and good luck.